Welcome. Welcome to week 7 of PSHA 6240 here at George Washington University. Almost done with the course. Congratulations on being almost done with your first course in this program. Just announcements. We're going to have a WebEx session this Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What I'm going to do is Group 3 is going to go, and as I mentioned last week, they're going to talk about the Boston Marathon attack specifically, and there's tons of start with the congressional report if you haven't done so already, and you should have enough guidance from this past week on what I'm looking for. So we're going to have that for about 25 minutes, and then we'll go into job talk. So if you're not in Group 3, I would recommend coming online at 9:30 so we could talk careers and talk more what your career goals are with this program and where you want to go next. So we'll do that at 9:30. Paper 2, I've marked all your papers, so you should have gotten them back. Most of them were good. I know this is a little bit more of a less esoteric topic than the first paper, so I think everyone was a little bit more specific, but just some issues need to be more specific. I think everyone could have been used more specific, and I'll give you the example, the sarin attack. Okay, a lot of you talked, it's very difficult to disseminate. Shinrikyo couldn't do it. ISIS probably couldn't get their hands on it, and that's great, but you got to take it to the next level. You need to know what the shelf life is of sarin. You need to know what binary versus unitary sarin. You know the precursor material for sarin. You need to know if that precursor material is on a schedule limitation from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. That's what I'm looking for. And then if you say we're going to stop precursor material for sarin as one of your recommendations, you got to tell me what the trade-off is. What's the impact on industry? That's the level of detail I think you can capture in these 1,500 words that would have taken your paper to the next step. So there's science behind it. And again, impact of the science. Whether it's ricin, sarin, plague, there are issues with the science that limit its ability to be disseminated and transported, but also give advantages. You need to talk about that. And then the other thing I think to talk about that a couple of you did, but very few of you did, can that substance, whether it's ricin, whether it's plague, so ISIS might not be able to do that in Yemen or in Syria, but how hard is it to inspire somebody to do that via their radicalization networks or self-radicalization networks? That's a key point as well. So ISIS as an organization might be able to do it, but could they inspire someone in the States, and what are the limitations going forward? And then finally, think of coronavirus. As we go now. In the real world, somebody's going to say to somebody like you, explain to me, is this coronavirus thing a threat? I heard it, it's really bad in China, and there's been a few cases in the United States. Do I as a governor or state municipality or someone at FEMA, do I need to be worried about it? What are the key information points? So you have to give your boss, in this case, language to calm people, or at least give basic facts in non-scientific manners, but are still publicly accessible. So think about that as you're watching coronavirus unfold and people go on TV and try and calm people down. How do I explain it if I'm in that position? How do I explain coronavirus? And how do I explain things like symptomatic transmission rates and all those other things that go with a disease in very simple terms? So review of week 6, are we more secure since 9/11? These are some of the questions that pop up. The answer is probably yes, but is it worth the expenditure in billions, trillions, depending on how you count it? Another question to ask, what do you do if Bin Laden, if you get that, and a lot of you saw the National Geographic, Bin Laden determined to attack in the U.S.? If that happens, and the president turns to you, intelligence analyst, like, what do I do? You better have an answer. And the reason I bring that up is you have to, if you give something as vague as this, whether you're talking about Osama bin Laden attacking the United States, or you're talking about an IED attack in in downtown Baghdad, you can't just give these vague answers. You have to, one, if it's not specific, you got to be prepared to say, sir, ma'am, I recommend that you increase the force protection level. I recommend that you stop convoys. I recommend that you take a second look at civil aviation. You better have those, what recommendations to implement based on the threat picture you're painting. So keep that in mind, again, as another professional point going forward. Was 9/11 an intelligence failure? I talked about this. If you had told me just before I saw the Nova documentary, I would have said no. We live in a free country. You can't shut down every visa that comes in the United States. That would be chaotic. We don't surveil people willy-nilly like they do in other countries. So if you have those circumstances, is 9/11 intelligence failure? Maybe not. But then I saw the Nova documentary, and I saw that there were two known hijackers, or two potential hijackers, in San Diego, talking to a known bin Laden safe house in Yemen, monitored by our intelligence agencies, and because of bureaucracy, lack of or apathy, bureaucracy, whatever you want to call it, organizational failure, we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't. In fact, the people that could have done anything about it, the FBI, San Diego police, they didn't know about it. That's an intelligence failure in my book. Arguably as well, the use of a airplane as a Tomahawk missile, that's an intelligence failure as well. The reason I bring that up is even though there's very easy countermeasures to prevent that from happening, to prevent a plane being hijacked and flown into a building. Right now, if you fly, you will see a drink cart in front of the cockpit if you fly in first class, and you see that. Something as easy as that would have prevented a 9/11-like attack. Fort Hood shooting. At what point should radicalization be monitored? This is not just for Fort Hood, but this is every shooting, whether it's the Orlando shooting, whether it's these various right-wing extremists. Everyone after the fact says, whoa, wow, how did we not know that such and such person? He had such mental health issues. He was surfing on Al-Qaeda websites or right-wing websites. How did we not know about this? So I ask you, at what point should radicalization be monitored? When someone passively views ISIS websites from the privacy of their home? Does that deserve further scrutiny? How about when somebody likes an ISIS or a right-wing website on social media? What happens if someone interacts on a chat room on an ISIS chat room? What about if someone like Nidal Hassan did and interact with a known terrorist? There's all these certain levels that that they can be monitored, but one, should we be monitoring them? We live in a free country. You're allowed to do this. And two, we don't have the resources to monitor everyone that likes social media. Anwar al-Awlaki has 200,000 followers, even though he's dead, on YouTube. It would take 3 FBIs to monitor all those people. So what level should radicalization be monitored? Do we have the appropriate funding, structures, and personnel to stop intelligence failures? We'll go into that, but I just ask that if you're going to ask for more money in these fiscally constrained times, you better have a very, very good reason. And then should we just maybe accept that in a free country, maybe we won't have 9/11s, but we're going to have Fort Hood shootings, Orlando shootings, El Paso shootings, Las Vegas shootings, in a country that's free and that doesn't regulate the sale of guns. Should we just maybe accept that this is going to be part of our existence? And as I mentioned in the first day or first week's class, the chances of you being involved in a terrorist activity, even if there's a spike, or a school shooting for that matter, are minimal. Bathtub drowning, hit by lightning kind of odds. Should we maybe just accept there'll always be low-level attacks? And then I always ask intelligence first policy. I talked about this in the earlier bullet. Always be able to brief what you think the Blue Force should do based on the intelligence that you provide. So, Week 7 preview, 2 issues, leadership targeting. Are we looking at it as a strategy or just a tactic? And you'll be asked to look at what's the difference between a strategy and a tactic. Under what circumstances is leadership targeting effective? When is it not effective? And then the final point is we look at the domestic Islamic extremism threat that started in 2009, spiked following the rise of ISIS. It's kind of being replaced by the right-wing extremist threat as I speak. But you have to ask, what are the conditions that led to this kind of resurgence that we saw in the last 8 or 10 years? So that's Week 7. If there's good issues, please let me know, and I look forward to this week's discussion board.